Hey, what's up, everybody? Yellow Turtle here with my co-host Beef. Welcome to another episode of the LUKSOfam podcast, brought to you by KEEZ. The LUKSOfam podcast is meant to be a short and informational show where we provide some takes on the latest LUKSO news in the space. Today, we have a special guest from the KEEZ core contributor team. This is his second time on the podcast, and we are so happy to have him back today to talk about his time in Istanbul at Devconnect, where he spent some real quality time with the LUKSO Smart Contract Team and the team over at Drops. But before we dive into today's episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors at LEEQUID, our preferred liquid staking solution on LUKSO.
LEEQUID is a liquid staking solution purposely built for the LUKSO blockchain. Users can stake LYX tokens and, in return, earn receipt SLYX tokens redeemable one-to-one for the deposited LYX. LEEQUID notably offers flexibility, allowing users to opt in or out of staking at any moment via the protocol's liquidity pool. This feature removes the potentially extensive wait times typically associated with traditional staking methods. With the support of advisors and multi-signatories from the LUKSO team, LEEQUID is steadfast in its commitment to achieving decentralization from the beginning, underlining transparency and trust. Following a thorough audit by consensus, LEEQUID is set to launch in October, integrating suggestions to ensure a seamless and secure user experience. Don't forget to follow LEEQUID on Twitter to stay updated on opportunities for earning passive rewards and contributing to the security of the LUKSO blockchain.
All right, Sage, how are we doing today?
Not bad, man. Just got off a great spaces with ETH and Alts and you guys and some other LUKSO fam. Should be up as a recording now on Alts' Twitter. It was a great listen. But doing good. Back in Puerto Rico after Istanbul, trying to get settled back in and get back onto the daily grind.
Nice. And Beef, how are you?
Pretty good. Just chugging some water, trying to wake up. Super hyped to talk about Sage's experiences, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just dive right in. Sage, you're just getting back to Puerto Rico, like you said, from Istanbul at Devconnect. Give us some general takeaways to start the episode of, cool things in Istanbul, food, desserts, events you went to, things of that nature.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. One, in Istanbul, or two, at an ETH event, right? I've never been to Devconnect or like any of the other like Ethereum Foundation events. So first, Istanbul was great. I think there's a lot of rich history in that city, which was fun to see. Getting to explore through Devconnect, like some of the more intricacies of the city rather than just like some touristy attractions was very cool. There's cats everywhere, which was awesome. It was a great time. I really enjoyed the city. I don't know if I ever would have went there aside from Devconnect. So being able to get that experience through these crypto connections was awesome. Yeah, I would definitely make a trip back. As for the conference itself, I think having gone to I've gone to NFT NYC a couple times, Art Basel a couple times, a couple other non developer conferences. Having this be NFT NYC was you just go to some big conference center and you just sit around and listen to people talk all day. This one had a different vibe to it. It felt like most of the events were scattered at private locations, or a lot of them were later in the day. A lot of networking later at over dinners or open bars, kind of just in a more social setting, which me being a non-technical guy who doesn't necessarily just want to sit and listen to some guy read off a PowerPoint for a while, that was very enjoyable. So yeah, I thought that the conference was great. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more throughout the episode.
Yeah, so spill the beans, man. Any great food, any desserts? Come on, you got to tell me about the food.
Okay. Beef. The first night, actually, we went to some local spot, right down the road from our hotel. And it was kebabs, which I got a mincemeat kebab, which was fantastic. A big hummus and veggies guy. So we got hummus, and then we got they were grilled red peppers and grilled tomatoes and a bunch of other kind of chopped veggie dips that would go with this fresh made pita bread. And man, the bread was fantastic, nice and warm, fresh out of the oven, right, with the hummus. Ooh, yeah, no, it was great. And I tried to make it a part of going there, trying to go to as many real local spots as we could and really dive into some of the cuisines. So we went to some areas where I would just let some native Turkish people kind of pick out what I'm eating down this line of buffet style foods, right, to try to get like whatever they would get on their average day, right? To try to submerge myself in the environment as much as I could. So the food was great. The coffee was really good. As Turtle knows, I'm not even a huge coffee drinker, but the coffee in Istanbul was very good too. Didn't have a whole lot of desserts, but when we were leaving, me, Ethan Altz, our cab driver like randomly pulled over like halfway through our drive and didn't really say anything. And he kind of just like got out and ran into this store that was next door and comes out with what he said was his favorite dessert in Turkey. And it was like this like it was like brownie on the bottom, and then there was like pudding on the top with like some pistachio. It was great. It was a treat on the way to the airport. But yeah, the food was great. Yeah, a lot of local beers I tried too. A lot of the local beers were really good too. Similar to kind of what you'd have around the U.S. at least for myself, but they were good.
Yeah, it sounds like you're way more adventurous when it comes to food than me. Like I have to know what I'm eating before I eat it. As far as your taxi driver pulling over and just randomly giving you something, I would be highly suspect just because I'm paranoid.
Yeah, that buffet line one too was me and Juan, who's on the LEEQUID team. We were standing in line pointing at stuff, and all of a sudden this Turkish lady next to me is like waving them off, telling me I don't want them, and then pointing at different ones saying I want to eat that. And I'm like, all right, load it up, sure, do your thing. Which it turned out great. It was like an eggplant. It was like some sort of like eggplant, like I don't even know how to, like a goulash or something. I don't know. It was like a big pot of like eggplant that was over rice. It was great.
What about the rave? Did you go to the rave?
I did go to Rave. Rave was fun. I'm not like a huge raver. I don't really love like EDM music, but as like one of my first kind of EDM concerts or raves that I've been to, I thought that was a pretty good setting. It was smaller, so there wasn't too many people. I mean, there was a lot of people. We were packed in there, but a lot of the LUKSO team was there, so getting to jam with those guys, which like those guys, a lot of them live in Berlin, and Berlin has a huge rave scene, huge party scene. So yeah, Rave was cool. I went to one other concert there too, like a rave late night. Yeah, it was a good. The nightlife there was fantastic. It was city never slept. We were out late pretty much all nights of the week. Everything was up and vibrant.
Nice. That sounds like an awesome trip. Sounds like a really fun city. So I want to shift the focus more towards the actual Devconnect event. And I was wondering if you have a most memorable moment and then why that stood out to you.
Most memorable moment. Most memorable moment, I think this is like maybe not like tech related, but having known Boost for so long, one of the smart contract developers at LUKSO now, who was a longtime KEEZ member, having known him for so long and never met him, and getting to chat him up for a while, like not necessarily about his job, but just about life, and engaging with another 23-year-old that lives across the globe that I've known for 2-3 years now, right? And really getting to meet him in person. I thought that was one of my favorite parts. Aside from that, I mean, MeetUp 2 was awesome. Hearing some of the use cases from the team in their talks, I think were some of, maybe not like the actual use case itself, but just the idea that like there's so many concepts behind these LSPs that this team has been working so hard on that haven't even begun to hit the surface, and most likely a lot of use cases that they haven't even thought of that will just continue to arise. I think was my favorite part of it. It was a big realization for myself.
That's awesome. And because you brought up the meetup number 2, what were some of those standout themes or discussions? So like, what was the main topic for the day?
I don't know if there was like one main topic for the day. I guess like universal profiles was a big topic. We didn't necessarily talk about like LUKSO, the blockchain itself, but we talked a lot about universal profiles and the standards that make them up. Stephen did another great introduction to universal profiles, like he has done in the past. Johan spoke about universal profiles in relation to account abstraction, which was a great conversation. Account abstraction was a huge theme throughout Devconnect. So it was great to be able to see like a cohesive presentation put together, comparing account abstraction, comparing universal profiles, talking about how they solve each other's woes and what they might not solve, and what ups bring to the table that account abstraction doesn't. And yada yada, right? So that was a really good one. Callum's talk too about universal profiles. He spoke about how they serve as backend architecture, right? He even said that like the migration bridge for LYXE to LYX is actually just a universal profile with certain permissioned access all over it, right? Which blew my mind, right? Like universal profiles can function as backend infrastructure. That's crazy. So that was great. Jean had a long conversation about his recipes, which that was a fun conversation, right? Again, it's easy. It was like a 45-minute talk to, and it went by quick. It was enjoyable to listen to. Those can get a 45-minute PowerPoint that can get draggy pretty quick, but that was a great one. And then listening to the LEEQUID team, the drops team, talk about kind of like their mission so far, how they've gotten to this point, how Sam and Carlos have met, what their plans are for LEEQUID, what their plans are for LUKSO, what their plans are long term for drops. That was a great conversation too, which I'm looking forward to being able to rewatch that one. Which, side note, that also is one of my favorite takeaways from the trip, is being able to meet up with the LEEQUID team and talk with those guys. That was a great addition to it all.
Wow, you really covered a lot of bases there. Sounds awesome, though. So I think I heard you say, though, that like one of the key trends and topic that like kind of dominated the Devconnect in general was account abstraction, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I heard, or I saw, I guess, Yaman said that Johan actually gave a really good speech about, or a talk about 4337 comparing like universal profiles and the LSPs. I'm super pumped to see that one personally. Did you take away anything like special from that one? Were you there for that one?
I was there for that one. Yeah, I was there for the whole thing. I would say that I probably won't be able to do it as much justice. It was a lot of information to take in that one day. I think that the basic set of it is like it's profiles over wallets, right? Like being able to abstract away like the actual account from the wallet and be able to do a multitude more of things that the standard EOAs can't do, right? Is the ultimate goal of account abstraction. That's also where universal profiles hit. And I guess like the crux of it was that like universal profiles also, although there's like some things they might not hit on, they offer way more on top of account abstraction while doing it again natively, which is the most important part, right? You don't have to add the EIPs on top of what you already have on this infrastructure. We're going to start off with a lot of this functionality, which is again, I think probably one of the most important parts of that. But yeah, when it comes out, he did a great job at presenting it in a very digestible form.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be trolling anybody who's like, 4337. I'm just going to be dropping that video underneath in the comments, just spamming it. So that's my technique.
Nice.
Yeah, and I want to get into a little bit more about the meetup, because Ethan Loring was talking about in the Twitter spaces that we just had, how many people ended up showing up and just how influential the LUKSO Smart Contract Team and the LUKSO team in general is in the developer community. I know that LUKSO itself is a small community right now, and a lot of us feel like, we're in an echo chamber and that there aren't many people in this space. But, what did you see while you were there, and how do you see the work of the smart contract team at LUKSO influencing the broader developer community at these events?
It's a great question. I think, one is I had people all week, just like Alt said, that like I have my LUKSO pins on my backpack, right? Walk around with my backpack all the time, just in case. And you get random people coming up to you. I had people at Open Zeppelin, like some of their core developers coming up to me. Oh, hey, LUKSO? Like, oh yeah. People on the street were randomly walking around on the streets in Istanbul. Hey, you guys on the LUKSO team, right? So like that narrative was very interesting, and I think that it for the tech, like them recognizing the tech is awesome, right? Them hearing the name is great, and then them also coming to the meetup and being able to converse with these guys, I think was like the ultimate beneficiary of it, in the sense of like, just like Eth was saying in the spaces today, these guys like really walk the walk, right? Like I had some, like you have a lot of developers that are just kind of like dabbling or like have done blockchain development a little bit or have kind of stuck on certain chains, but these guys, they have a really good grasp of what they've built and why they're building it, right? So the conversations with them, again, it stems on the reasoning behind LUKSO of like, rather than just being able to talk about like the actual technical architecture of what they've made. They can talk about the reasoning behind it, right? Why you might want these things, what they solve, what they're going to bring in the future, right? Which I think is when you have technical guys that can also have that conversation with you, it makes for a really interesting person to engage with, right? And that was through and through the whole smart contract team.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the takeaway I've gotten from just talking to you and Ethan Altz about your time in Istanbul is that the the team at Luxo, I mean, speaking about the smart contract team because that's who you interacted with, but it seems like the entire team outside of the smart contract team as well really believes in what they're doing. It doesn't feel like it's just another job for them, right? Like they actually want to be there. They want to create this change in this space because they believe it's what's needed and they believe it's the future of blockchain technology. And I feel like it's very easy to see through people who just do things for a job, right? Like I don't think the Luxo team would be as successful with their developments as they are if that was the case. And I was wondering if you could shed a little bit of insight to your interactions with the team that kind of made you draw these conclusions.
Yeah, I think like me being non-technical, right? I definitely engaged in a lot of conversations with these guys about the tech and about their job and whatnot, just because, right? While we're there, you might as well. But at the same time, I tried to have a lot of like personal conversations with these guys, not personal on too much of a personal level, but like getting to know them as people, right? Because I want to know kind of how you tick, why you're here, what you're doing, right? Like, and in having a lot of those conversations, I had a lot of realizations of the same thing that you just made there, Lennon, of like, these people aren't necessarily here because they're getting paid the most or because Luxo is the most impactful brand for their potential career path at this moment, right? This big name right now. It's more like we've really been sold on this idea behind why this tech is being made, and that is like a really powerful motivator for why we want to be here. And I think a big part of that obviously comes from Fabian, but in having a lot of conversations with Louis too, I think Louis being their talent, their main hirer for talent, I think he is a major part in instilling that vibe, which, as you know, I mean, culture is such an important part of KEEZ, and when you can really establish culture, like those are the things that are tough to establish, right? You can build yourself a team of developers when you have infinite capital, but if you can build yourself a team of developers just by being guided by culture, that's like when things can really get impactful. So like even like I had conversations with Steven about like I'm in Puerto Rico right now doing co-living because I'm definitely bullish on co-living and sustainable farming efforts and like raising families in community and doing all of those things, right? And me being a 23-year-old, it's great in theory, right? I'm just getting exposed to it. But Stephen being an individual who's married with children and wanting to get involved in that same, not wanting to, but like has been involved in that scene for so long, it's like really interesting to hear him talk about like these potentials for like evolution, or not evolution, but like getting back to these situations in humanity where we can have like better outcomes of human growth. And he thinks that like not only do I think these things, but I also think that Luxo can help, right? Like that is like a great narrative, right? Of you have someone that is like intrinsically motivated to help the globe in some way, and they're also doing that through this blockchain, right? Which is great. It's great to see.
That sounds really cool. It's makes a whole lot of sense as to why we've kind of taken this same thought path at KEEZ, right? Of building a really community oriented team, and it's nice to see that that carries over to the Luxo team as well. It makes me very bullish on what they're developing and what they'll continue to develop. And then so while you were there and spending this quality time with the team, were there any exciting projects or developments or side projects that they're working on that they might have brought up to you or anything like that?
I mean, one thing that got brought up a couple times was that, I mean, just the mobile app for universal profiles, right, is in development to an extent, right, which is obviously very exciting. They're continuing to polish up standards, which is great. Not a lot of like individual projects, maybe, or like side projects. I mean, naming services got brought up a couple times, but that's a great buzzword either way. I don't know how much truth there is behind it. I didn't specify. One conversation that I had with Callum I thought was very interesting in that, like, I brought up some of the questions from the community of like, hey, you guys just set up like a centralized a centralized recovery service for the universal profile on this initial beta launch. Like, I thought we were going to be able to set them up like multi-sigs. Like, what's up with that, right? And I kind of brought it up, and Callum was like, oh, yeah, like that. We just like set up this first initial use case to make sure that people could have one case of recovery at least, but all that's required to do that is someone building the front end for it, right? Like, you attach a couple more smart contracts and make the front end, and now it's separate side project, right? So those like projects like that, like little projects that we've talked about for so long, or something like one of the hackathon projects that just popped up. I think it's called, like, I don't want to butcher, I don't remember the name, Ghost or Graveyard or something, where it's like one of the use cases that we've talked about for so long of sending spam to just like some dead address so it doesn't touch your wallet, right? Like, that's still a functionality. It's not there natively, which is like, it's a use case that we've always talked about being able to do with ups, but all it really takes is some quick front end to be able to set it up in theory, right? So that was, although it's not any direct projects that I heard that were being built that I was bullish on, I mean, that from Callum being like, those things can be done pretty quickly, right? I think was pretty cool. It's cool to hear.
Yeah, it's super exciting to see some of these demo videos and breakdowns that people are posting about the hackathon. I'm really excited after the team gets to like officially comb through them and then do the judging to see kind of what filters out at the end. But Grave, yeah, I think it's called Grave. It looks pretty sick. So yeah, it looks like they're also going to build in like functionality to auction off some of these items that'll get sent to this graveyard, like universal profile. This is cool stuff. Talking about like innovation, in what ways do you think community meetups like this drive that innovation and collaboration within like the LUKSO ecosystem as a whole?
Massively. I mean, I'm extremely keen on physical connection, right? I think that where you're just meeting in these digital landscapes, it goes so far for like even something like this, where like I'm not building on the LUKSO, like I mean, we're building a LUKSO blockchain. I mean, I'm not building like the tech on the core team, right? But being able to talk to those guys and get this person to person vibe, you get to connect, right? And I think it goes much further than we think. I think that it's a big part of KEEZ's mission to do more of these physical kind of meetups. Yeah, I think it's very important. I like to hear too that like the LUKSO team, I mean, they have that big headquarters in Berlin, and they've mentioned that there's like community spaces there, right? And that's something that I know that they're trying to buy into more of. Like, first floor of their office is supposed to be like a community co-working area, right? And that is like, to hear them say that, that's awesome, right? I mean, this is a quick plug, which we'll announce sometime later this week. But KEEZ will be doing its first physical co-living meetup in Puerto Rico for a retreat, which more info to follow. If you're interested, hit me up. But it's along these same lines of like, let's just get together, and although it's great to connect digitally, let's connect physically and be able to have face-to-face conversations and hopefully great things come out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited for our KEEZ trip. And I think you're so right. I mean, we're digital communities. That's how like we started, but it is nice to have that physical presence, right? It's nice to go to these events and talk to people one-on-one. You have more intimate conversation. Yeah, I think that's a great take on that.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're globally connected now on this decentralized network. Like, why not utilize it, right? Like, again, I wouldn't have been able to go to Istanbul if, I mean, I say wouldn't have been able to, but like might have not ever been to Istanbul. Definitely wouldn't have been to Istanbul with the amount of people that I knew or like would be friendly around. Like, it would have just been like myself or like a family trip or something like that, right? I was able to go to a foreign country and meet with 10, 15 plus people that I had engaged with online, which is awesome.
So before we start winding down this episode, are there any other personal takeaways or things that you learned while in Istanbul or at the meetup or at these other side events that you would like to share with the greater community?
Yeah, I think like one thing that I pulled out was obviously this great work that like Louis and Fabian have done with setting this culture, right? Like I think that like in the earlier days of Luxo, it might have just been more around like the people that are like kind of just doing it as a job. But now it's where they've gotten to a point where I think it's not too easy to get a job there. They're able to kind of gate that through people that are like intrinsically motivated to want to work on the project, right? Which is a great way to build a company. So that like on the side of being bullish on the team, obviously we're bullish on the tech. Being bullish on the team itself is a great feeling. I think like some other like side things that are not like directly Luxo related, the vibe there was awesome, right? For being in like, I mean, I guess like maybe there's a market turnaround coming at some point, but being in this like downturn of a market, I think there was still a fantastic turnaround. It was very interesting to go to a meetup that was outside of the US, right? Like, cause you interact with a lot of people that like don't get to go to the US, right? For a lot of these events. So being able to interact in the other cultures and meet people from outside of the US was a great experience as well. Having never really ventured out of the US myself. So I would say like on that side, like go to events, right? Like I know that they're not cheap, but Devconnect didn't have a ticket for its events. Most of the events that we went to were free, aside from Rave, but shout out Boys Club. So like aside from plane ticket and hotels, right? Like you can kind of just make it happen. So I would say, yeah, like take advantage of physical events that you can go to. The other one was we went to Shelling Point, the Gitcoin event. We didn't stay very long, but I think that seeing in this hackathon how many people are focusing on crowdfunding or ICOs or virtual ICOs, like some sort of fundraising, I think is fantastic, right? I think Alt's brought it up in the spaces today that that kind of like funding ecosystem didn't necessarily happen this early on Ethereum, right? And seeing that like we're placing high emphasis on it today, I think is fantastic. I think hopefully some of these hackathon projects can come to a point of use, right, where we can actually use them. I know that KEEZ is internally working on some interesting things with some of Gitcoin's code to be able to bring some funding onto Luxo as well. So I'm very excited about kind of this notion behind what Gitcoin's all about with crowdfunding and quadratic funding and public good funding and potentially bringing that to Luxo. So that was just kind of a theme that I like to connect there.
Yeah, those were awesome takeaways. I'm super bullish on your experience and that you got to share that with us. So before we close up shop, anything else we want to say, Turtle?
Just remember to like, comment, subscribe on the Pink Pill Productions YouTube. All the engagement is greatly appreciated. Yeah, Beef, you want to sign us off?
Yeah, as always, remember none of this is financial advice. Just a couple of dudes talking about what we love.
Peace.